Imagine waking up not today, but 2,000 years ago. The sun filters through the shutters, but it's not your usual Monday. It's an ordinary day in Pompeii, a city pulsating with life, ambition, and secrets. This is not a tale of silent ruins, but of a vibrant existence, interrupted in an instant. Today we will take you back in time, not to see a stone cemetery, but to walk the bustling streets of one of the most fascinating cities of the Roman Empire. A place where every stone, every fresco, every shadow tells the story of a world that stopped breathing only to be preserved forever. Get ready to discover the paradox of Pompeii, the city destroyed to become immortal. The first ray of pink light caressed the peaks of Vesuvius, painting the clouds above the Bay of Naples gold. In Pompeii, the city no longer slept. It was an awakening of sounds and scents, a daily concert announcing the beginning of a new day. From the early hours, a sweet and unmistakable aroma spread through the streets, that of freshly baked bread. In the bakeries, the slaves and bakers, their faces marked by the heat of the furnaces and their clothes covered in flour, worked tirelessly. The stone mills turned, turning the grain into flour, and dozens of round, golden, crusty loaves were extracted from the glowing ovens. These were not just the morning food, but the heart of the Pompeian diet, intended to feed everyone, from the patrician to the humblest of workers. The workers ran quickly, carrying the steaming bread to the market stalls, to the taverns that were already opening, and to the houses awaiting breakfast. But bread wasn't the only thing arriving. From the port, another world pulsated. Merchant ships, their sails furled, had docked overnight, bringing precious cargo from every corner of the empire. The merchants, with their colorful togas and shrill voices, were already bargaining over the newly unloaded goods. Exotic spices, such as black pepper from India and cinnamon from Arabia, filled the air with intense aromas. Amphorae filled with fine wine with a strong, heady flavor arrived from Greece, ready to be served at aristocratic symposia. And then came brightly colored fabrics and the finest silks from the East and sturdy wools from Gaul, which would soon clothe the citizens of Pompeii. The port was a crossroads of cultures, languages, and opportunities, a place where wealth met and exchanged under the rising sun. While the people were struggling for bread and goods, in the heart of the city, the Forum was already teeming with another form of life, the political one. Among the imposing columns and marble statues, candidates for public office, wearing their pure white togas, the candidus, from which the word candidate derives, moved through the crowd. They greeted every citizen with a handshake, promising favors, free entertainment, and perhaps a reduction in taxes, even though they knew full well that many of those promises would never be kept. Gossip, venomous criticism, and rumors filled the air, but politicians learned to ignore them, focused on their quest for power. It was an open air theater where ambition and deception mixed in an endless dance under the eyes of gods and men. But not all of Pompeii was so noisy and frenetic. Hidden behind high, imposing walls, especially in the northern part of the city, were the domus, the luxurious residences of the Pompeian aristocracy. Here life moved at a completely different pace, one of refinement and opulence. Imagine entering one of these houses. Just inside the front door, a spacious atrium welcomes you, its impluvium collecting rainwater in a central basin. But the real jewel is the peristyle, an internal garden surrounded by columns where nature was tamed and perfected. Flower gardens gave off intoxicating scents, mosaics shimmered in the sunlight, and marble statues depicting Greek gods and heroes added a touch of timeless elegance. The walls of the rooms were an explosion of color, lively frescoes narrating myths and legends, scenes of everyday life or idyllic landscapes, testimony to the exquisite taste and wealth of their owners. Every detail, from the arrangement of the furniture to the small sculptures, was designed to create an environment of pure beauty and comfort. Inside these domes, the patrician's day was marked by luxurious rituals. Servants, moving with almost ghostly discretion, attended to every need. They prepared scented baths, mixing essential oils and aromatic herbs for a complete sensory experience. They dressed their masters in tunics of the finest silk, woven with gold thread, while the matrons adorned themselves with precious jewels, pearls, and amulets. Life flowed slowly and pleasantly, far from the bustle of the markets and the diatribes of the forum. It was a bubble of privilege, where time seemed to expand in an eternal pursuit of pleasure and beauty. Yet, in this earthly paradise, the aristocracy lived in total unawareness of the danger that loomed. Every day they admired Vesuvius, their silent neighbor, a majestic mountain silhouetted against the blue sky just a few kilometers away. It was an integral part of the landscape, a familiar and reassuring presence, a symbol of strength and stability. No one imagined that this sleeping giant, which had slept peacefully for centuries, would become an executioner, ready to stop time and swallow up everything beautiful and vibrant that had been built with such care. For generations, Vesuvius had been merely a backdrop. Lush vineyards covered its slopes, and none of the Pompeians nor their ancestors had ever seen the mountain in any other guise. It was a neutral, almost benevolent element which protected the city from the cold north winds and offered fertile soil for crops. It wasn't a monster in their legends, nor a threat in their dreams. It was simply there, an immutable part of their world, a constant reminder of nature's grandeur but not its fury. They could not know that that silent neighbor, whom they had learned to love and ignore, was accumulating an unimaginable force, ready to be unleashed without warning, transforming their reality into a legend of destruction. That day, the frenzy, joy, ambition, and light-heartedness of Pompeii converged in a whirlwind dance of life. The bakers had just finished their first batch, the merchants had concluded profitable deals, and the politicians were about to enjoy the fruits of their promises. The houses were shining in the morning sun, the gardens were in full bloom, and the aristocracy was preparing for the evening banquet. Everything was in its place, a perfect picture of Roman prosperity. Then, without any real warning, the ground began to shake. Not a gentle jolt, but a powerful wave that shook buildings, a deep roar coming from the bowels of the earth. It was the beginning. In the early afternoon, around 1 o'clock, a deafening roar tore through the sky. From Vesuvius, no longer silent but furious, a massive column of smoke and debris rose, rising ever higher, forming a gigantic cloud shaped like a pine tree. Hell had begun. Within minutes the sun disappeared, swallowed by a blanket of ash that darkened the sky, turning the day into a bleak apocalyptic night. Then it started to rain, not water, but lapilli and pumice, small volcanic rocks that fell incessantly, covering every surface, penetrating every corner. The streets filled with a thick layer of grey, making escape a desperate undertaking. People sought shelter, some in their homes, some under porticos. The panic was palpable, a primal terror that spread faster than the ashfall. Many tried to flee towards the sea, but the violence of the eruption was inexorable. Then came the most lethal phase. Towards the next morning, waves of fiery clouds, known as pyroclastic flows, rushed down the valley at incredible speeds. They were a lethal mix of gas, ash, and incandescent rock, with temperatures exceeding 300 degrees Celsius. Anyone who stood in their path had no escape. Life, caught by surprise in its daily triumph, was instantly extinguished, suffocated, burned, trapped in a shell of ash that solidified around the bodies, preserving their forms for eternity. Pompeii in an instant went from being a vibrant center to a city frozen in time. The catastrophe of Vesuvius was an act of destruction of unprecedented violence, and yet, in a paradox unique in history, that very destruction made Pompeii immortal. The ash, lapilli, and pumice that rained down on the city not only buried it but preserved it, sealing it in a perfect time capsule. What should have been its final end became its eternal salvation. Beneath that blanket of volcanic debris, the daily life, intimate moments, ambitions, and fears of the Pompeians were crystallized, transformed into a vivid snapshot of a distant era. Today, walking the streets of Pompeii isn't like visiting a sterile museum, it's an immersive experience, a journey back in time that allows us to touch history firsthand. We can walk the same cobblestones that patricians and slaves, merchants and bakers walked on 2,000 years ago. We can enter the same domus, admire the same frescoes that adorn the walls of their homes, frescoes with colors still so vivid that they seem to have been painted yesterday. We can see the tavern counters, the carpenters' shops, the bakeries with their ovens still intact, and even the graffiti on the walls that tell us about love, politics, and everyday life. This is where you can truly feel the spirit of ancient Rome. It's not a sense of cold archaeology, but of pulsating energy. One perceives the beauty of art, the complexity of society, the tragedy of an unexpected fate. Pompeii is not just an archaeological site, but a window onto a lost world, a place where the voices of the past still seem to echo among the silent ruins. It is a lesson in human fragility and the immortality of history. Pompeii is, in all respects, the city that never died. Its history, made of stones, frescoes, and eloquent silences, continues to speak to us, to inspire us, and to remind us that even in the most complete destruction, a unique and powerful form of eternity can be born. If this story of life and destruction has fascinated you, don't miss our next video.